Hello, friends. Today you will hear an amazing story that we found on the internet and which we felt was so incredible that we had to share it with you. A she-wolf was dying quietly in the den, and her alpha male didn't know how to help her. All of her newborn cubs had died. The she-wolf didn't understand how it could have happened. They all died in one night for some unknown reason. Unfortunately, these things happen, as some infections can be deadly. The she-wolf was still lactating, but there was no one to nurse. Her maternal love remained unspent. The she-wolf refused to eat anything. No matter how hard the male wolf tried and how much fresh meat he brought her, she simply turned away from food and looked longingly at her mate. Wolf families are very strong. They mate for life and remained faithful and caring until the very end of their lives. The male wolf was ready to die for his female, but he was powerless against her sadness. Their pack understood everything and tried to support the alpha female. The leader went hunting, hoping that a fresh hare could awaken the she-wolf's appetite and get her to eat. The male wolf made its way through the thickets when suddenly, his sensitive ear caught a distant sound. Unlike anything else he'd ever heard, it was so quiet that it seemed that a mouse was squeaking underground. The wolf cautiously walked towards the sound. There, in the middle of the forest path, he found the source of the sound. It was a tiny puppy, barely alive. It was unclear who left the puppy there or why, but it certainly was on the brink of death. The puzzled leader sat down in front of the puppy. He didn't know what to do in such a situation and decided to simply leave. But the baby squealed with all its might. The poor thing was trembling with all of its tiny body. The wolf carefully took the puppy by the scruff of the neck and quickly disappeared into the thicket of the forest. He didn't know what exactly he was doing or why. He was probably guided by his instincts. The she-wolf didn't even raise her head when she heard the wolf, but only squinted her eyes in his direction. She was losing strength, but then the male wolf put the little fluff ball in front of her. It didn't smell like a wolf cub, but it was still a baby animal, and it was frightened and hungry. Smelling the milk, the baby crawled desperately towards the she-wolf and, finding the nipple, began to nurse loudly. The leader watched in amazement as a spark flashed in the eyes of his female, and just a moment later, she was already licking the puppy. Two lost souls found each other. Perhaps they got along so well because they were both grieving. The puppy soon became a member of their family. A dog, born of an enemy, became a child of the wolves. The female quickly recovered, finding the reason to live. She started eating and drinking and playing with the puppy and resting. As the adopted son grew up, the adoptive father began to gradually teach him the tricks of hunting and survival in the wild. The dog turned out to be smart and a quick learner. He was even better than some of the wolf cubs of the same age. And yet, this couldn't go on for long, as the wolf pack was no place for a dog. The laws of the pack are harsh but fair and aimed at surviving. The older the puppy got, the more difficult it would be for people to retrain him. The decision was hard for the wolf parents to make, but still, one fall day, the male led his adopted child away from their lair. The puppy still thought of everything as a game and playfully ran around in the falling leaves. At dawn, the wolf led the puppy to a house on the outskirts of the village and sent him ahead, while he quickly disappeared into the fog. He returned the dog to the human world. The puppy was found by a teenager, Misha, who immediately rushed to her father, begging him to keep the beautiful dog. The trained hunting eye of the father immediately noticed the characteristic signs of the dog's breed. It was a husky. They named the dog Akito and decided to keep it. A couple of years later, Akito grew into a large dog. He was obedient, intelligent, and an indispensable assistant in hunting. All other dogs simply accepted his leadership. Akito was great at tracking down game, finding even the best hidden holes. It seemed that he could sense the smells that others couldn't and see what they couldn't see. Akito felt at home in the dense forest, and one could never be afraid of getting lost with him or accidentally coming across a wild boar. Akito wasn't just a regular hunting dog. He was a partner who understood his master without words. but he had one feature that caused bewilderment in people at first. Akito never took part in wolf hunts. Whenever the dog realized that people were hunting wolves, he would simply sit down by the car and refuse to move. And no amount of persuasion or threats could get him to change his mind. Eventually, everyone accepted this eccentricity of his because he was too good at everything else to reproach him for this strangeness. Misha grew up with Akito. They were the best of friends who spent all their time together. They played together, they slept together, and then the boy even started to go out hunting with him. The father gradually taught Misha all the tricks of tracking down game and how to behave when encountering wild animals. One day, the man decided to teach his son to hunt for a hare, and after gathering all the hunters, they moved into the forest. Akito disappeared into the forest once in a while, but they didn't worry about him because they were more likely to get lost than their dog. They soon wandered deep into the forest and finally saw the first hare footprints. However, they realized that they were tired and decided to have a bite to eat. They noticed a fallen tree and sat down, unwrapping their food. That's when the man felt an unpleasant chill run down his back. He took a cautious look around and froze. He saw a huge wolf standing not too far away. He was obviously the pack leader. Apparently, the hunters chose to take a rest a bit too close to the wolf's lair, and thus, the leader came out to protect his pack. The man understood perfectly well what such an encounter could lead to. Killing the pack leader would only anger the rest of the wolves, and they would definitely attack the hunters. If Akito had been nearby, perhaps he would have warned them about the dangerous place they chose to take a rest at. However, it was at this unfortunate time that the dog got distracted by only he knows what. The father sharply drew his gun, refusing to simply give up, and decided to at least try and protect himself and his son. The wolf tilted his head and let out a quiet roar. The hunter understood that the wolf was preparing for an attack. Now, it would all be up to fate. But suddenly, a dog appeared as if out of nowhere. Akito never barked, so he appeared silently and stood between his master and the wolf leader. It seemed that he was trying to protect the wolf that was at the man's gunpoint. The boy begged his father not to shoot so as not to hit Akito accidentally. The man silently lowered his gun, ready to throw it up again at any moment. Akito wagged his tail. That's something wolves don't do, but they do understand what it means. The leader studied the smell coming from the hunting dog, and it brought back the memories of the distant past. The wolf realized who the dog in front of him was and stepped towards him. Akito seemed to be waiting for this and happily threw himself at the wolf's paws. Akito then fell on his back, exposing his stomach, his most vulnerable spot, to clearly demonstrate that he respected the leader and remembered how he had once saved the puppy's life. The leader howled to call out to his mate, who quickly came out of the hidden lair. Apparently, things were going great for the couple, and the she-wolf had recently given birth to 3 beautiful wolf cubs who were now hanging out sweetly at her side. It took the mother a moment to remember her adopted son and come out. The father and son were fascinated looking at the reunion that played out right in front of them. Akito clung to the wolf's side, and she sniffed and licked his face, making it clear that she remembered everything. Meanwhile, the boy quietly told his father that it was raining on the day when he found Akito, and that he could see paw prints on the ground that looked like they belonged to wolves. However, the boy decided that he was seeing things and chose not to tell his father about it. He was afraid that he wouldn't be allowed to keep the puppy if he told the truth. Apparently, the boy wasn't wrong, and those really were wolf footprints. People could only guess what could have happened for the puppy to be raised by wolves. But at least now they understood where their husky's strange behavior came from, and why Akito refused to hunt wolves. Seeing each other after the long separation, the animals didn't seem to be paying any attention to the people, but were rather enjoying each other's company. But the time had come to say goodbye. Akito once again didn't want to leave his mother's side, who licked his nose reassuringly. He saved her then, just as she saved him. The fateful encounter of 2 unfortunate creatures had saved both of them. The wolves looked after the people with the dog as if they wanted to make sure that everything was fine with them. Akito also stopped and raised his head to howl as his adoptive father had taught him, and for a long time, people could hear the echo of the leader howling in response. Having returned home, Misha informed his father about his firm decision that he would never become a hunter, and even more so, that he would never harm wolves. And that's all for today, friends. Share your thoughts about today's episode in the comments. Hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.